Hello, friends. Now, I don't know if you saw the audience reactions to this movie. They were all over my For You page on TikTok, and they must have made it to my honey's For You page too. He asked me what I knew about Terrifier 3, and I, as the resident horror fan, was like, what do you know about Terrifier 3? Honestly, this is not his type of movie, and I know that. So I fully planned to stream all three alone with some popcorn at home once this movie was released. But apparently people were walking out of the theater and people were getting sick. Naturally, after hearing about audience reactions like that, he said we should get tickets. So we ended up going to the movies last weekend after all. Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back. It's your movie buddy here, ready to talk about the latest movie I watched. Whether you're a longtime subscriber or follower, or you're here with me for the first time, I am thrilled to have you here. If you're looking for detailed plot breakdowns, you won't find them here, but stick around for my spoiler-free thoughts and honest opinions on the latest film I watched in theaters. If you're here with me on YouTube, you can find timestamps in the video description to jump straight to the sections that you're most interested in. New reviews drop every Friday and the occasional Saturday when my part-time job takes up full time of my life, so hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Spotify to stay updated. With that all out of the way, grab your popcorn, be kind to your local rats, and let's get into today's episode on Terrifier 3. After surviving Art the Clown's Halloween massacre, Sienna and her brother struggle to rebuild their shattered lives. As the holiday season approaches, they try to embrace the Christmas spirit and leave the horrors of the past behind. However, just when they think they're safe, Art returns, determined to turn their holiday cheer into a new nightmare. As always, I want to get into the themes of the film, or at least my take on it. You know, when I thought about this episode when I left the theater, I was thinking surely this is going to be a quick 7 to 8 minute review, no more than 10 minutes. As a very new fan of the franchise, what can I say? It's blood and guts and not much else, right? What even is the theme here? Initially, when I watched Terrifier, I honestly just thought it was prolonged violence against women, no real plot, no theme, and definitely no character development. But this past weekend, I binged all three movies and I'm glad I stuck with it. So let's cut through all the blood and gore and circle back to a theme that we can talk about. There's definitely something here about good versus evil and the courage to overcome, but if you've been following my reviews, then you know we're going to talk about trauma instead. I love the final girl trope so much, and I especially love how these films have been developing Sienna's character. Speaking strictly on Terrifier 2 and 3, more specifically 3, these movies are about trauma, survival, and resilience. It wasn't always, but it's getting there. And while 3 might not get these ideas across in the best way, I appreciate where they're going. Sienna is trying to cope with her trauma after the events of the second film, all while dealing with the horrifying realization that Art is back. Allowing Sienna to become a more complex character elevates each installment, making it more than just blood and guts and more than where the franchise started. Now that brings us nicely to the character development. It's slim pickings, but I'm okay with just talking about Sienna more. She continues to evolve into a strong final girl. Side note, I absolutely love how these films subvert the final girl trope too. I love that they introduce Sienna in Terrifier 2, and I love how her story builds on that resilience and trauma that we just talked about. She's not just surviving, but she's growing, and with each installment, she's becoming a more complex and layered character. There is still a lot of work to be done in terms of developing her fully, but the groundwork is definitely there. I'm excited to see where her story goes next and if the writing will continue to step up when it comes to story and character development. I'm starting to ramble here, so let's move on. I saw a TikTok where someone said that if you're the type of person that needs to look up triggers, these movies aren't for you. I disagree. I think it depends entirely on the individual. Personally, I always check for triggers if I so much as get a whiff of something potentially happening that I don't want to see, especially when it comes to sexual violence or animal death. And clearly, I am still watching these movies despite the fact that I'm on high alert for things I don't want to see. Speaking of which, animal death and bodies are present in both Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3. In the second film, I'm not gonna lie, I looked away at first. It was the first time we'd seen that from the franchise, and I was expecting it to be really upsetting, but I asked my honey if it was bad, and after a second, I realized how ridiculously fake it was, and I managed to get through. In the third movie, there's a brief, but of course graphic moment where a rat is being killed. I will admit, I made a face, it felt unnecessary, but then again, so much in these movies is over the top and unnecessary, so why would they draw the line at a rat? And they didn't draw any lines with any rats, because there is a pretty intense scene toward the end of the film, also involving rats, but I somehow didn't mind that. Anyway, if you've already made it this far into the franchise, then you know what to expect. But if you've never seen any of these movies and are thinking of getting into them, let me be clear. These movies are intense and extremely violent. It's wall-to-wall blood, gore, animal death, child death, a scene of suicide, and a moment of self-gratification that went on way too long. I know this isn't the most extreme movie out there, but for the average moviegoer that doesn't see this kind of thing often or has never seen something like this before, I cannot stress this enough. If you are sensitive to any of the mentioned triggers, every single one is extremely graphic. So please do your own research. I always talk about the website Does the Dog Die? It's my go-to for checking triggers. Look up what you need to, and please make sure you are in the right headspace before watching these movies. I am going to tastefully transition from talking to you guys about triggers to talking to you guys about the practical effects, because let me tell you, Terrifier 3 delivers the goods. Blood, gore, innards, body parts, things going in ways you're thinking and ways you can't imagine, and everything coming out. If you're a fan of practical effects and over-the-top gore like myself, then you are in for a treat. Terrifier 3 gives us exactly what we came for. While the movie spends time continuing the story and building the just Sienna, well, actually Art too, we're starting to get more. It's not much, but we're getting more when it comes to his lore. My point is, Terrifier 3 spends a little more time on the characters, but don't worry, it's still packed with kills that continue to push the boundaries in creative and brutal ways. Every scene involving Art the Clown feels like an exercise in that creative brutality. Everything is depicted practically and with excruciatingly painful detail. What sets these movies apart is director Damien Leone's commitment to practical effects over CGI, and this makes the violence feel raw, real, and visceral, a series staple that fans have come to expect. The kills are brutal, creative, and unflinching, and okay, I'm gonna ramble a little, stay with me. I've always been a fan of horror, and back when I was a small baby, we'd watch behind the scenes content, back when DVDs had all that extra content, right? Anyway, I've always been fascinated by how they pull off these practical effects, and the Terrifier films are just it for me right now. It's incredible. Everyone talks about the bedroom scene in the second film and how brutal it is and how intense it is and how crazy it is and all of that, but wow, I love it. It is brutal, it is intense, sure, but I am in awe. The artistry and the craftsmanship that goes into these practical effects are mind-blowing, and especially in an era where CGI dominates, it's like a brutal love letter to old school horror, and I love it. Getting right into the acting, Lauren LaVera returns as Sienna Shaw and brings that much needed emotional core to the film. Earlier, I mentioned that I hope the writing continues to evolve, and with that, I think Lauren's portrayal of Sienna will only get stronger. She has her moments, and it's clear she's a talented actress, but the writing gets in the way from time to time. Now, despite the writing, I love what she's bringing to the role in those intense moments of survival, but especially in the moments where she's dealing with, or not dealing with, her trauma. Sienna is becoming a more and more interesting character, and Lauren brings an intensity, fight, resilience, and determination to the character that really turns her into a final girl worth rooting for. Now, we have to talk about Art the Clown. David Howard Thornton is absolutely iconic in this role. His portrayal of Art is nothing short of chilling and yet oddly comical. He embodies that psychotic unpredictability, effortlessly flipping between dark humor and brutal violence, all while remaining completely silent. It's a performance that really sticks with you, and paired with the insane level of gore, it makes Terrifier 3 a must-watch, especially for fans who know exactly what art brings to the table. So I know you're wondering, how does Terrifier 3 compare to the previous 2 installments? Like I said at the top of the video, I am a new fan, and I did watch all 3 movies one day after another. There is something to be said about the violence against women, but I love the gore and the practical effects. Now, I love me a deep and meaningful movie just as much as the next person, but I also don't mind a turn your brain off and have fun kind of movie either, and that's really where I think this series started. I was very surprised going from 1 to 2 at the huge jump in character development and plot. These movies are all blood and guts, but there's definitely growth in terms of characters and story from one installment to the next, and I love that. Terrifier is all brutal kills with a razor-thin plot. Terrifier 2 is a good mix of even more brutal kills with the start of an overarching story and characters that are being fully realized. And now with Terrifier 3, we still get those fun over-the-top kills, but there's a good attempt at emotional depth and a continuation of building characters like Sienna, Art, and Victoria. I appreciate the continued character development, but I will say some of the writing during a few of these moments really holds them back from fully landing. I also think that this movie chooses to kill characters off screen, which kind of surprised me because I feel like the previous 2 installments didn't shy away from anything. That being said, the sheer intensity and creativity of the kills that we do see definitely makes up for it. Now, let's wrap up with my final thoughts on the movie. After discussing some key elements, the real question remains: is it worth your time? In my opinion, if you're a fan of this franchise or even just interested in what Terrifier offers like I was, then Terrifier 3 is absolutely for you. If extreme violence and over-the-top gore aren't your thing, then do not bother watching any of these movies. I get it. This kind of intensity isn't for everyone, and there are plenty of scenes designed purely to shock and provoke a reaction. That's part of the fun for fans, but it can definitely alienate viewers who aren't used to this level of brutality. My personal opinion is usually longer, but honestly, you like this type of movie or you don't, and I'm not going to try to convince you because of how intense these movies are. They are not for everyone, and I did struggle through the first one, and not for like the gore or anything like that. The lighting was wild, the music was crazy, the sound was not great, but it is all part of that low budget indie charm that I personally don't venture into very often, so it was a little bit jarring. Terrifier 2 was the one that really got me interested. Some of those kills are fantastic. I really love the introduction of Sienna, and I just love seeing Art. He's absolutely hilarious. He's absolutely iconic. And Terrifier 3, I'm not gonna lie, it did make me wonder why people were leaving the theater. Of course, every movie has its pros and cons, and naturally, people like what they like. We're gonna get into one criticism of the movie, and I'll share my thoughts. Now, I did only pick one out, you guys, because it kind of covers everything I saw people complaining about. This person says that this is a genuinely bad movie. Horrible acting, the pacing is all over the place, the plot felt non-existent, and so many pivotal characters are just killed off screen, and so many lazy plot decisions. What do I say about this? I think if you've seen the first film in terms of plot, you know what to expect. Plot-wise, that film set the baseline. It's mostly about the gore, and it's a showcase for practical effects. As the films progress, there is a little more character and a little more plot. It honestly sounds like this person was expecting a bigger leap from one film to the next, or they jumped straight into this franchise with the third movie. Now, I do agree that the acting isn't great, but I do think Lauren LaVera and David Howard Thornton give the best performances in these movies. Their acting really stands out, especially in those intense moments for Sienna or those silly expressive moments for Art. As for the off-screen kills, yeah, I feel that. These movies are known for showing everything in painful detail, so when a few kills happen off-screen, it does feel a little bit off, especially when you expect the movie to show them. I feel like it messes with the pacing a little bit, like they were rushing to get to the end. But, and I'm talking about one kill specifically, here's the thing. When a character dies off screen, especially in horror, there's a really good chance that they're not actually dead. So I didn't mind it too much for that character specifically, but we'll see what happens in Terrifier 4. At the end of the day though, the Terrifier movies are a love it or leave it kind of deal. If you're into them, it's probably not for the plot, but more for the insane kills and practical effects. And honestly, with each installment, the plot is getting a little more interesting. But let's be real, we are all here for Art the Clown, Sienna, practical effects, and the gore. Have you had the chance to watch Terrifier 3 yet? If not, what's holding you back? Is it not your cup of tea, not your usual genre? Is it too intense? Is it too violent? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts after today's episode. And if you've already watched it, I want to know your take. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or did you fall somewhere in between? Share your thoughts, opinions, and reactions in the comments below. I am all ears. Overall, Terrifier 3 is relentless and brutal in ways that will appeal to diehard fans or anyone who doesn't mind a side of plot with their over-the-top gore. It builds on the foundation of the previous films, expanding a little bit more on Art the Clown while keeping the practical effects front and center. If you've made it this far into the franchise, you know exactly what you're in for, and Terrifier 3 delivers. Now, I know the film's extreme violence and disturbing content won't be for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart and certainly doesn't shy away from graphic visuals or interesting kills. Sure, the plot takes a backseat to the gore from time to time, but we all know why we're here. Terrifier 3 gives us exactly what we want. Outrageous kills, unrelenting tension, and plenty of blood. By now, you're either all in or you're not. If you're the kind of person who finds movies like this hilarious because of how over the top they are, who's hooked by the sheer insanity of the violence, or who's amazed by the incredible practical effects, this film might be for you. All right, you guys, before we wrap up, I want to share my thoughts on what movies I'll be reviewing next. Like I said in the intro, watching this movie was completely unplanned. I think I got tickets for it on Friday for Sunday evening. I did have the podcast exclusive planned for Twisters, but as you can tell, I decided to focus on this episode instead. But do follow the podcast on Spotify because I will be dropping that episode next week. I did take a whole week off work as a little birthday gift to myself, so I am going to work on that podcast exclusive episode. And the next movie I have tickets for is Smile 2, and that episode will also post next week. And you guys, I love the first film so much, and I have high hopes for the second one. My hopes are actually getting higher because I follow a few movie reviewers on TikTok, and so far, 3 for 3 have said good things about this movie, so I am really looking forward to it. After that, I have tickets for Venom: The Last Dance. I've been talking about how much I'm looking forward to this movie and the bigger implications in the Sony Marvel situation universe, and maybe even the MCU too, depending on how that all works out. Going into November, I have tickets for back-to-back movies, Gladiator 2 and Wicked. There's a lot that I'm excited about in October, and honestly, a lot more that I'm excited about for the rest of the year. If there's a movie that you are excited about and you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments below or send me a message on Instagram at a.rocket.review. Your suggestions are always welcome, and I love hearing from you guys. But for now, a huge thank you to everyone who has stuck around with me till the end of the video. Last time we talked, I shared my thoughts on Joker Folie à Deux. If you haven't checked out that episode yet, it is just a click away. If you're watching today's episode on YouTube, you can find the link to that review in the top right corner. And for my podcast listeners, that episode is available for you as well. Your feedback is always appreciated, so please share your thoughts on YouTube in the comments below. And if you're listening on the Spotify app, swipe up and let me know what you're thinking. Do you agree with my take? Do you have a different opinion? Do you think Terrifier 3 was the most graphic out of all 3 movies? Like I said earlier, I'd never seen these movies before. I was definitely interested, I just never got around to it. I ended up watching the first one by myself while my honey took his sister out to watch that Pharrell Lego movie, and then we watched the second one together. I was talking to him about how graphic the third one is when we were walking out of the theater. I was surprised at the reactions I was seeing on TikTok and reading online, because I think if you saw the first two, it's not that shocking. So many people are going on and on about the shower scene, but it's the same thing, different font as the first movie. Is it the most graphic? I mean, I am a fan of the gore, but more so the practical effects. It's so interesting to see what they're able to achieve on screen. Plus, the gore doesn't really bother me. It's so over the top, it becomes hilarious. But I do understand that it's not for everyone. Some of the kills were extreme or controversial. I mean, the highly brought up bedroom scene from Terrifier 2 is outstanding. But that one kill toward the end of Terrifier 3 is pretty close, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments and let's get the conversation going. If you are enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. For those who prefer on-the-go listening, maybe while you're driving in the car, while you're at work, or maybe while you're getting ready for your day, follow me on Spotify so you don't miss out on our podcast exclusive episodes. And hey, if you're on Instagram, follow me at a.rocket.review for sneak peeks and behind-the-scenes content. And that's really just me going to the theater and watching movies at home, and I've been getting into audiobooks lately too. Feel free to hop into my DMs with movie suggestions or just to chat about films. Your support honestly means so much to me, and your engagement helps our community grow. Whether it's on YouTube, the podcast, or on Instagram, your presence is greatly appreciated. So until next time, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, support your local rats, and happy movie watching. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.